Good morning, students.
Good morning. Students, where are you? Say good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, ma'am. All
Yes,
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
करो at least teacher को.
yes, very good morning. Yesterday, we started with DNA replication in eukaryotes and we are yet to finish it. So, in eukaryotes, the first was just revise a bit and then we'll proceed. So, in eukaryotes, there is a eukaryotic cell cycle, which I already studied. So, in eukaryotes, the DNA replication is confined to only S phase, that is synthesis phase, and then rest of the cell cycle has its own phases. So in eukaryotes, we have studied it with respect to the aspects which are different. So there are characteristic feature in eukaryotic replication. So the first is replicons. What are replicons? Replicons is this structure. Okay. So here, this stretch of DNA from the origin of replication to these two termini is called as replicons or replication units. So because eukaryotes have larger amount of DNA than prokaryotes, they have many origins of replication. At each origin, the replication will start and then they will merge ultimately and the entire DNA will be replicated. So in this diagram, you can see there are many replicons working at the same time. Then because eukaryotes go through a cell cycle, it is important that the DNA should be replicated only in S phase. And because there are many origins, it is also important that each origin should be used only once. So for that, the second aspect was initiation of replication. So in eukaryotes, for example, was Saccharomyces cerevisiae, there are origins called as autonomously replicating sequences. So these sequences during initiation binds a pre-replicative complex. This is actually the initiation complex. When eukaryotes, it is called pre-replicative complex, that is pre-RCs. This pre-RCs is made up of ORC proteins and licensing factors and other proteins also, like the proteins with helicase activity. Because there is no special helicase, this replicative complex when gets activated only unwinds the DNA. So some proteins must have the this helicase activity. So all these proteins together from this pre-RC complex, that is pre-replicative complexes, at each origin, these pre-RCs are assembled and then they are activated at a particular point when cell goes from G1 to S, so that replication starts when it is S phase and one origin of replication is used only once, right? Next aspect was eukaryotic DNA polymerases. Now, here there are many DNA polymerases in eukaryotes, more than 15. Here we have listed only 5. So alpha polymerase has primase activity which synthesizes RNA primers. Delta polymerase works on lagging strand, epsilon works on leading strand, and there is a eukaryotic DNA ligase which ultimately seals the gap at the end. Okay, because first was the helicase, that is with the pre-RC. Then there are topoisomer enzymes also in eukaryotes, like the prokaryotes. So the supercoiling will be taken care of by topoisomerase enzymes. So their function is more or less same, only the structure will be different because these enzymes are more complex as compared to prokaryotes. Then we did the process. We have referred to the same diagram as in prokaryotes because the core process remains same because the DNA structure is same. It is made up of 4 nucleotides, the double helical structure. So naturally there will be a leading strand, there will be a lagging strand. Entire machinery will be at the replication fork and will move in bidirectionally. So those features remain same. So we have referred to the same diagram and we have revised it. Okay. Now, this replication fork will move bidirectionally. So where will they end? They will go on replicating the DNA. So the end will be when the entire DNA will be replicated. Okay. The difference is the two replication forks will not meet like in prokaryotes, because the reason is eukaryotes have a linear DNA and not circular DNA. Okay. So when the DNA is, the template strands are come to end, this replication will be completed. But there is a problem at the end of chromosomes, so the end of DNA. Okay. And this is our next part, how the ends of the chromosomes are replicated. So in this diagram, look at this A diagram. In this blue is the template strand or the parent chromosome, and pink will be the new one. So in this, you can see there is 5' to 3' end and 3' to 5'. In the B diagram, you can see that new DNA is getting synthesized. So here we will go from right to left. So if we go from right to left, the upper strand, the template is in 3' to 5' direction. So naturally the new strand will be the leading strand. Only one primer is required when it is synthesized from 5' to 3'. When the 3' end is generated, polymerase will add nucleotides. Now imagine this strand is the entire DNA. Okay. So when it comes here, the template DNA has been replicated. And the lower strand will be the lagging strand, because the template is in 5' to 3'. So there must have been many primers here, and with the in between there would be Okazaki fragments. Because this is the end of the process, all primers must have been removed and all the DNA have been sealed to form a continuous DNA. Now at the end, these two primers will be there. Okay, because this primer will be there at the end. So when these two primers are removed, you can see at the C diagram, there will be an overhang or there will be a gap left. Okay. So you can see here, this is the 5' end of this new strand, because this is 3', so naturally this is 5', and same goes with the lower strand. So because 5' end is generated after removing the primer at the end, no DNA polymerase can fill this gap, because DNA polymerase can add nucleotides only at the 3' end. So this gap is left here. So if nothing is to be done of this gap, then what will happen? In the next replication cycle, now suppose this gap is left as it is, then these two DNA molecules will go to daughter cells, and these two will function as a parent DNA for the next replication cycle, right? So that time what will happen? The primer will be synthesized here, because this DNA is missing. So primers will be synthesized here, and then next replication cycle will start. So by the time next replication cycle is completed, again when the primer is removed, the part which has the primer is again would be missing. If this goes on, the DNA will become shorter and shorter. So avoid this, there is a special mechanism to replicate the ends of chromosome. So this is the magnified view of the end of the chromosome. The end of the chromosome is called as telomere. Okay, mere is the part, and the end part of the chromosome is called as telomere. Now, at the end of the chromosome, because it is a linear DNA and ends are always susceptible to the exonuclease activity, because various nucleases are there, they are prone to damage. So at the end, there are telomere repeat sequences. You can see in this diagram, here it is TAAGGG, again TAAGGG. So this is a telomere repeat sequences at the end. And these sequences are different in different organisms. The length as well as the actual sequence will vary from organism to organism. Okay, here, this is a human telomere sequence. So here you can see those repeats, and this is that gap which has been formed after removing the primer, and this is the overhang. Okay, the single strand is called as overhang left after the primer removal. So what is the mechanism? So here the special enzyme replicates the ends of chromosome called as telomerase. This enzyme has a protein component as well as an RNA component. It's a different enzyme. Okay, the enzyme itself has its protein component, which is made up of amino acids, and there is an RNA component. The structure of the enzyme itself has an RNA structure like this. This is that green is an RNA component. You can see that U means uracil, so this is definitely an RNA structure. Okay, so this is the RNA of telomerase. So what happens? This telomerase binds to this overhang in such a way that there is a complementary base pairing between the telomere repeats and the RNA component of the telomerase. Okay, so that means this RNA of telomerase has a complementary base sequence as per the telomere repeat of the organism. Okay, so when this complementary base pairing takes place, this the remaining sequence, because you can see only these 5 bases have been paired, and the remaining RNA component is used as a template. This RNA acts as a template, and in the next diagram you can see the enzyme produces new DNA strand. So here the enzyme uses its RNA component as a template and synthesizes new DNA strand. So here the DNA is getting synthesized from the 3' end only. Okay, DNA nucleotides are always added to the 3' end. So here you can see this was a 3' end. To this end, telomerase has added these many DNA nucleotides. All right, because this enzyme is using RNA as template and synthesizing DNA, it's a type of reverse transcriptase enzyme. Okay, it's reverse transcription. In transcription from DNA, RNA is synthesized. So here in reverse transcriptase, DNA is synthesized from RNA. So similar is happening from RNA component, DNA is getting synthesized. So telomere is a type of reverse transcriptase enzyme. Next step, this telomerase enzyme moves forward. Okay, you can see the same like this diagram B, the telomerase has moved these many nucleotides, and now it is again pairing with this GTTAG sequence of the DNA. Of course, it is newly synthesized DNA. So now again these 6 nucleotides are exposed. Again the same activity will take place. Telomerase will synthesize the new DNA using the RNA template. So after 2 rounds of telomerase activity, this stretch of DNA of 12 nucleotides is lengthened. Okay. Next, what will happen? Now, because the DNA has been extended, telomerase will be removed, and then again the RNA primer will be synthesized here from 5' to 3' direction like this. And when there is 3' end is generated, your DNA polymerase enzyme will add new nucleotides in this direction. When it comes here, then there is single gap is left, single nucleotide gap, which is sealed by DNA ligase. So the next process is same as your DNA replication: primer synthesis, adding new nucleotides by DNA polymerase, and sealing the gap with DNA ligase. Okay, so after this activity, in diagram G you can see new DNA has been synthesized. They have not shown the in-between steps. So here this is the DNA made by the regular process. Now after the primer is removed, then again there is a gap left. Okay, when the new primer is been removed, again there is a gap and there is an overhang. But because telomerase has already added repeat units, the net shortening of DNA is avoided. Okay, because of the telomerase activity, and these telomerase activity is it's depend upon the organism. Here they have shown only 2 rounds. There could be many rounds of replication also this DNA synthesis also, telomerase activity. Okay, so that the DNA is already lengthened, and when the primer is removed, there will be no net shortening of the DNA. Now, this telomerase activity is found in cancer cells, in some stem cells, as well as some reproductive cells like sperms. Telomerase activity is absent in normal body cells. That is the reason, that is not the reason why body cells have a definite lifespan. Okay? They complete certain number of replication cycles in the lifetime and then they die. Because without telomerase activity, after every replication cycle, some of the DNA, particularly the length of the primer, that DNA will be shortened, and the time will come that this loss is unbearable and the cell will die. So in normal cell, this activity is not there, but the cancer cells, some reproductive cells, and some stem cells, they do have telomerase activity. Okay, so this is how the ends of the chromosomes are replicated. Okay. Now I'll move to next. Now, during S phase, which is a part of interphase, you know that DNA occurs in the chromatin form. So if we imagine the simplest form of DNA coiling or DNA packaging, it is the beads on string model. You must recollect the first lecture, introductory lecture, in which we have done how DNA gets into a chromosome. So first step was DNA is wound around a nucleosome. Okay, so the DNA is, the parent DNA is itself in a form of nucleosome. So when it is replicated, again it needs to be wound around the nucleosome. So nucleosome is the histone octamer, the core on which the DNA gets wound. So naturally, if DNA gets doubled, the histone also should get doubled. So when the replication is going on, histone synthesis also goes on simultaneously, because they has to be get doubled so that new DNA should be wrapped on them to form nucleosomes, new nucleosomes. Okay, so here in this diagram you can see this is the DNA replication machinery, this purple one, which is moving towards right hand side. So here in this diagram they have shown old histones and new histones. Old histones are shown in dark color and new histones have shown in lighter shades of the same color. Okay, so here this is the parent nucleosome. You can see all the dark shades. Now these are the two new strands. Okay, have been synthesized because the replication fork has been moving to right. So this is the replicated DNA and this is the unreplicated DNA. So here in this diagram you can see all the light shades are there of histones. Here some you can see dark, some are light. Again here some dark shades and some light shades of histone subunits. Okay, so there is a mechanism how new nucleosomes are formed. Here, so histones are of 5 types: H1, H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. Those 5, the 4 histones H2A, H2B, H3 and H4 forms the histone octamer because they occur in dimer. So 4 units, 2 units each. So they form an 8 subunit core. So that is called as core histones and it forms an octamer. Okay. So when the replication goes on, when the replication fork moves, the DNA is unwound. So naturally these old histones, they disassemble as well as the new histones are synthesized. So in the inside the nucleus, in nucleoplasm, there should be old histones which gets disassembled and there should be new histones which get synthesized anew. So when the old histones separate, they separate as H3, H4 as tetramer. This is important. Remember H3, H4 subunits, they remain as tetramer, means 4 units. But H2A, H2B separate as dimers. Okay, so they separate as their 2 units, and this H3, H4 remain as tetramer. When the new histones are synthesized, they are also synthesized in H3, H4 as tetramer and H2A, H2B as dimer. Okay, so when the new histone has to be assembled, H3H4 tetramer doesn't have any choice because there are only 2 options. So either a new histone will have old tetramer or it could have a new tetramer. Okay, but so here you can see either old or new H3H4 histone subunits could be there. But because H2A, H2B separate as dimer, there are 3 options. Either both subunits could be old, both subunits could be new, or one could be old or one could be new. Okay, so there are 3 combinations possible: entirely old histone octamer, entirely new histone octamer, or there could be either old or new H2 H2B dimer, or there could be old or new H3 H4 dimer, tetramer. Okay, so here for H3 H4 tetramer, there is a 50% possibility, and this assembly is quite random. So there is quite possibility that all these combinations occur in the new nucleosomes. So when these histone octamer gets assembled, by the time this happens, DNA has also been replicated. So new replicated DNA gets bound on this histone octamer to form new nucleosomes. Okay. So here we have completed with eukaryotic DNA replication. Okay, because in eukaryotes, because the DNA is wound around histones, this is also one part of replication, that histone should be doubled so that the new DNA gets wound around new histone octamers to form new nucleosomes. Okay. Now we'll move to the last part of this unit, that is DNA recombination. Now, what is recombination? Means to form new combinations. Okay, so what happens in DNA recombination? Genetic exchange take place and new genetic combinations are formed, that is DNA recombination. So tell me, wait, there are different types of DNA recombination, but here we are going to focus on homologous genetic recombination, which is also called as reciprocal recombination. So do you recall any process in which there is homologous genetic recombination takes place? Yes. Homologous genetic recombination. Remember any process? Any event? Yes.
Ma'am, during Pachatine
Crossing
stage
over.
of meiosis,
Yes. Right. But what is that event? What happens during
Crossing over. Crossing
Yes.
over.
Crossing over.
Right. During crossing over, what happens? I was stressing on homologous because during crossing over, non-sister chromatids of homologous chromosomes, they physically exchange the DNA. Okay. During crossing over, the two non-sister chromatids, they overlap and form the structure called as chiasma. Okay. The structure resembles to letter chi, that is cross X, and then reciprocal physical exchange of DNA takes place. So how this process exactly happens? How physical exchange takes place? Because the DNA has to break and then has to reassemble. So to explain that, there are models proposed to explain how this process exactly happens. So here we are going to see Holliday model of for recombination. Robin Holliday proposed this model originally. Then other scientists have modified this model, Holliday model. So here, so this model basically explains how homologous genetic recombination happens, how that physical exchange takes place. Okay. So this is the first step. Here there are two homologous chromosomes shown in different colors, these double helices. And in this example, we are considering two alleles, that is A plus and A, B plus B. Okay, there are two pairs of alleles. So first is the recognition and alignment of homologous chromosomes. You may remember that during meiosis 1, that is prophase 1, first the homologous chromosomes, they rearrange. Okay, they rearrange very close to each other, and that is called as synapsis. So during synapsis, homologous chromosome align in such a way that two non-sister chromatids are quite close to each other so that the genetic exchange can take place. So this is that phase, that is recognition and alignment. Then next step, what happens? Single strand of each DNA breaks and invades the other. You can see here that blue strand has broken here and the yellow strand has broken here, and then they invade each other. Okay, invade means they cross each other. So here you can see that chiasma structure, and then the gap is sealed. Okay. Now here the process is not quite simple as it looks in this diagram. There could be gaps in between when this process takes place, when the DNA breaks and gets resealed again. So for here, there could be some enzymes required. If there is a gap, then that gap has to be filled, and then the last gap is sealed by ligase enzymes. So when this is done, it forms a structure called as Holliday intermediate. When the enzymes completed with the process, this is called as Holliday intermediate, and this is called as internal branch point. Okay. Next, what happens? This branch moves, the event is called as branch migration. So you can imagine if this is sealed here and this branch moves rightwards in this diagram, so this structure will arise, the fourth diagram. Okay, and here you can see there are heteroduplexes. You can see the two different strands. Now the combination has arisen, yellow and blue, and here again the same combination. So different DNA has been aligned. Not necessary that this entire DNA is complementary, but here you can see those heteroduplexes, and the branch is now here. Okay. Next step, what happens? The lower branch moves 180 degrees. This is a four-arm structure. If at this point, if these two homologous chromosomes, they get arranged like this, imagine, and lower branch moves 180 degrees, then this structure will be formed. This is a redrawn Holliday intermediate. So at this point, it moves 180 degrees and it forms this structure. Okay, that is redrawn Holliday intermediate. Next step is this Holliday intermediate is cut by endonuclease activity. Okay. So endonuclease enzymes will cut this structure. There are two options. Either they can cut this structure in horizontal plane or they can cut in vertical plane. Okay, and this event happens randomly. So there is equal probability of horizontal as well as vertical cutting by endonucleases. So if the Holliday intermediate gets cut by endonuclease in horizontal plane, then this structure will form. If you straighten up this chromosome, then this structure will arise. Okay, you can see there is here there is a gap. So that gap is sealed and these duplexes will arise. Okay, and if the holiday intermediate gets cut by endonuclease in vertical plane, then this structure will arise. Okay, and ultimately the gap will be sealed and the duplex will form. Now, this structure, after horizontal cutting, the ultimate structure which is formed is called as patch duplex, because you can see the entire DNA is blue and here entire DNA is yellow. Only that single patch has been exchanged, right? Hence, it is called as a patch duplex. But the alleles which we have considered, they are having parental combination. That is, one chromosome still has A plus and B plus, and other chromosome still has A, B. Okay. But look at this combination. When the chromosome has been cut in vertical plane, then these you can see the splice duplex, because this half is blue and half is yellow, same with the other chromosome. So it is like joining two different chromosomes. Splicing means joining. So here the structure looks like two different chromosome has been joined together. So hence they are called as splice duplex. And look at the allele combination. One chromosome now has A plus and B, and other chromosome has A and B plus. You know that plus means wild and the no sign means mutant, right? So this splice duplex has a recombinant. It is called as recombinant because there has new combination has been formed, new combination of alleles, and patch duplex has the parental combination. Now you may have heard crossovers and non-crossovers. So this can be considered as that event, but it depends on where the exchange take place and which alleles are in consideration. Here, because we have considered A plus and B plus, which are at the ends of these chromosomes, and the event has taken place in between these two, it has resulted in a non-crossover. But at the same time, if the chromosome has been cut in vertical plane this way, that arises in recombinant, that is new combination. Okay, so it depends on many factors, depends upon which allele is considered. It depends on where the event takes place, that is where chiasma is formed, and exactly which part gets exchanged between two chromosomes. Okay, but yes, this is only one model to explain how homologous recombination takes place. There are other models or other versions of the models which explain this event, because this takes place during prophase 1 and it is very difficult to study this crossing over event. So there are different models try to explain what exactly happens. Okay. So this was the last part of this unit, that is DNA recombination. So with this, we have completed with the first unit, that is DNA replication. Okay.
Okay.
So do you have any doubt in this? I hope you have gone through the part which is already done. So I'm talking about that, or you may ask even today's lecture. Is there anything which you want me to repeat, or you have any doubt?
Students, you can unmute you and ask any question that you might want to ask Shweta ma'am.
Okay. So you can take
I
your
presume they
time.
are going through the, yeah, they are going through the presentation probably, or they are.
Okay, okay, okay.
At least unmute yourself, students, and let ma'am know whether you have or you don't have, or you'll go through and then ask later on something, some kind of reply. Urvashi, yes, you have unmuted yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to know that the third step and fourth step of this holiday model.
Okay.
Yes, okay. Third and fourth step. Okay.
Yes.
You have understood here
Yes.
how holiday intermediate is formed. Okay. When this DNA breaks and they invade each other, the gap is sealed. Here there are no gaps, but there could be, because this is very complicated event. So there could be gaps in between which need to be sealed. So after that process is done, this holiday intermediate will form with the internal branch point. You can imagine this. Okay.
Yes.
Now, can you imagine this branch moving towards right? What will happen? This will get stretched to the down and this will come up. You have to
Yes.
imagine this. If this branch moves like this, okay, this structure will form. This event is called as branch migration. This branch is just moving so that this yellow chromatid of this chromosome will come up and this blue chromatid will come down. Okay, and they form this structure in the fourth diagram. Right? Can you imagine that?
Yes.
Okay. So here what happens in the fourth diagram, you can see the heteroduplex. Hetero means different, right? So here you can see that blue and yellow combination. So that is the heteroduplex of chromosomes. Okay. I said that not necessary that the entire length could be complementary. Yes, because they're not necessary that will happen, but still uh, they will form the heteroduplex. Okay, along the length, and then here at this point they will stretch and form the four-arm structure like this. This is the same structure. Okay, you can see that same combination of two homologous chromosomes. Only thing they have stretch at this point. Okay, see, diagrammatically it looks very simple, but actually this may not be. Okay, because actual structures are much more complicated than this diagram. Okay, so you can imagine that at this point, at the branch point, the arms of the chromosome stretch outward so that these structures form. Okay, and then the lower part, the lower chromosome moves 180 degrees and then again they get rearranged.
Okay.
They again get rearranged and then there will be cutting in horizontal and vertical planes and then you will get patched and spliced duplexes. This is only one model which is proposed to explain what happens during crossing over. Okay. We are yet to know what exactly happens or details of the process. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll wait. You go through the entire presentation and let me
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Probably, if you can scroll through the
Yes.
slide, yeah, it will be a revision, and then they can recollect if they want to ask anything. Students, you can stop, ma'am, at that particular slide, and then you can ask
Okay.
if you have any doubt. That would be the good solution for that.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's start. Okay. We started with DNA replication in prokaryotes. We started with these models. Remember, there were three. Okay, and which of this is correct? The answer was given by this experiment. Messelson and Stahl performed this experiment and they proved that semi-conservative model is indeed correct. Okay. Then before going to the actual process of replication, we have gone through the enzymes required for replication. Okay. In this, we have focused only on DNA polymerases because these are the polymerizing enzymes. We have studied there are 5 enzymes in bacteria, and we have studied their individual activities, that is polymerase activity and exonuclease activity. So here is the polymerase activity, how the phosphodiester bond is formed by DNA polymerases. Then we did that polymerase 1 is the first enzyme, then DNA polymerase 3 have been discovered, and other enzymes are there which required for DNA repair. Then we studied exonuclease activity, how 3' to 5' exonuclease activity is there, and how 5' to 3'. Okay, this is like a backspace key, and this is like a delete key. This 5' to 3' exonuclease activity is required for primer removal on lagging strand. Then we did the actual process. The first step was initiation. So these are the steps which we revised yesterday also. So I hope you remember. Okay. Then this diagram shows the entire elongation step, how two strands, that is lagging as well as leading strands, are replicated during the process. Okay. Is this process very clear? Because same, the core process will takes place in eukaryotes also. Students, is there any doubt here in this diagram particularly, like this diagram, 5 steps?
No, I don't think so. They have.
Okay. Then we focused on joining Okazaki fragments because that diagram is showing both the strands. So here we are focused only on the lagging strand and the events which takes place in joining Okazaki fragments so that the continuous DNA is formed. Okay. Then this was just gist of all the components required for prokaryotic DNA replication. Then this is the bigger picture of how the replication takes place in E. coli because the DNA is circular. So when it gets replicated, it forms a theta-like structure. Hence, it is called as theta model of replication. In this diagram, particularly, it is clear that positive supercoils do form ahead of replication fork. Those are removed by topoisomerase enzymes. Then we did rolling circle replication. Here in this diagram, both they have shown single stranded as well as double stranded. The entire DNA rolls around itself, hence it's called as rolling circle, takes place in bacteriophages as well as conjugation, during conjugation. Okay. Then DNA replication in eukaryotes. Remember the aspects which are different. So eukaryotes go through cell cycle. What are replicons? There are many replicons working at the same time during replication, which is different, as prokaryotes have only one. So that because there are many replicons, the DNA will be replicated in the stipulated time during S phase. Okay. Then this is also important that pre-replicative complexes are important. They are formed during G1 and they ensure that the one origin is replicated only once and they avoid the duplication of DNA as well as they confine replication to S phase. Eukaryotic DNA polymerases. Remember these enzymes alpha, delta and epsilon. Others are also required. Some are required for repair, some are required for mitochondrial DNA replication as well. Helicase, I said that helicase activity is with pre-RC. So some subunit of that complex must have helicase activity, and there is eukaryotic DNA ligase, which ultimately seals the gap. And replicating the ends of chromosome. Why this is important? Because if the these gaps are left as it is, the DNA will become shorter and shorter after every application cycle, and that will be the loss of DNA, and that is not accepted. So for this, there is a special enzyme, that is telomerase, which acts like reverse transcriptase because it has its own RNA component, which it uses as template and synthesizes new DNA. So after few replication cycles, the DNA has been lengthened, and then the other strand is extended by the normal mechanism, that is primer synthesis, DNA polymerase extending the primer, and DNA ligase sealing the gap. Then after the primer is removed from the end, net shortening of the DNA is not there. Okay. And the last aspect was assembly of DNA into nucleosome. Because eukaryotic DNA occurs in nucleosome form, as DNA doubles, nucleosome has to double. So for that, histone should be doubled. Histone should also be replicated. So for this, new histone synthesis takes place during S phase only when the DNA is getting replicated. So here are the combinations. As the DNA unwinds, the old histones disassemble, but they disassemble in the form of H3H4 tetramer and H2H2B dimer. And then new are synthesized also in the same combination like H3H4 tetramer and H2H2B dimer. So all these new combinations are possible, and it's a quite random event. After new histones are synthesized, then your new DNA, by the time it gets replicated, it gets bound on this histone octamer to form new nucleosomes. The last was DNA recombination. There are other recombination methods also, but here we are focusing only on homologous genetic recombination or reciprocal recombination, which takes place during crossover during meiosis. So this holiday model explains exactly it explains with the steps how the actual physical exchange of genetic material take place. Okay, which forms two duplexes. There is a patch duplex which has, in this example, has parental combination, and splice duplex has a recombinant combination. So patch duplex, you can say non-crossover event, and splice duplex has be considered as a crossover event. Okay.
Okay, that was good revision.
See, I wanted to show them a video, but I can do that tomorrow also.
Are you sure you want to show? I mean, you can show it tomorrow.
Yeah, because now it is 12:03, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. How long is that?
I think 5 to 6 minutes, I guess.
Because the next session will start at 12:15, because they will have another 5 minutes break.
Yes.
And I guess Karishma has already joined in.
Okay. So yeah, that will be fine, because today they will go through again.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they may ask doubts in the beginning of the next class also, that is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Students, say something. Hello.
Something. Yes, ma'am.
You asked them to say something, so she has said something.
Yeah, she said something. Okay. Fine. So go through this entire unit from Russell. Okay. Now this holiday model is not there in iGenetics. It is only in genetics. So I'll put this part on Google Classroom as a material for you to refer. Also, you can refer to ePathshala. Notes are, the material is there, ePathshala. And there is Russell. Okay. So go through all the material, and we can take questions at the beginning of the next lecture, that is tomorrow, and then we'll start with the next unit. Okay.
Okay, so you have completed one unit.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So thank you so much. Vidya.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, students.
At least now you can say thank you,
Thank
students.
you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
I'm pausing the recording now, and if you can stop the screen share. Done.
Okay. Hello, students.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Hello.
today we will start with our regression. Till yesterday we have calculated our correlations. What is the effect? What is like the data says, and many things. So now for regression, we can say if we have a data means that is self-explanatory type, and finding the relation make us to find the response means you can predict the value on the given data. In easier term, we can say regression analysis is something which shows a relationship of direction plus a strength of quantitative data. It is mostly used to find a predicted quantitative data depending on the given value. It is used in almost all the disciplines, and they are related to each other as independent and dependent variable. Now, what it is independent and dependent? So they are the components where we can say independent variables are the predictor, or they are the regressor or explanator. These all terms are same for the independent variable. Means the data which has been used to find the possible data, that is the dependent data, which is also known as predict, regressed, or response. So be clear between these two component, because independent is something which will predict the data of the dependent variable. Okay. So now we can say regression analysis can be employed or can be used to estimate the value of one variable corresponding to the given variable. That is, if I can say regression model can be of two types. It can be like simple. What is simple? Means just a straight line where you have just two variable, like you see the slope y equal to mx plus c. So you just decide what is y and what is x. That is simple linear regression model. There are also multiple regression models where we can study many different effects, or we can analyze or regress the another many values based on a single data. So let's see what is this simple linear regression model. Okay, we can say they have two variable, can be denoted as x and y, or a and b, or c and d, anything. They are just a component. So when x is independent, y is dependent one. So what can we say? The relation is called regression on y on x because the y is dependent on x. That's why we say regression of y is on x. Means x is not dependent on y, but y is dependent on x. Let's study with some like photographic image. We can say, see, this is a slope. You know it very familiar, right? So when we say it is y equal to mx plus c, it shows this value where y and this interpretations is seen. We can say that when y is the dependent variable, the x is independent. B can be intercept and m can be slope. Basically, this B is just an icon. Here it can be A, C, or anything. So the alphabet doesn't matter. It changes according to the possibility or according to the preferences. You have to just be precise when you're writing what is dependent and what is independent. And the slope m. Now, what is this slope m? Slope m is actually your coefficient. So we can say the slope you are getting for a line is actually a coefficient. Means yesterday you calculated coefficient, your correlation, right? That correlation is your m value for the equation. See, here the b changes. Earlier it was b, but in this it is written as c. So this is just a presentation. It doesn't specify any identity. Okay, it's just a type of presentation. So we can say the dependent variable can be easily found out when we have our slope, we have our intercept, and plus the independent data is available. So we can calculate our y. So now we can say in this graph, you just see when here the m is cutting here at 2, right? Then the intercept c is here. Anyone? Hello? Students, answer. What is c here? Hello, students. Am I audible? Hello? Anyone? Hello? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So what is the C value here? Just look at the graph and answer the question. What is the C value here?
2.
2. Right? The line intersect at 2. That is your C is 2 here. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we can say, if we just denote a particular value to each, we can say predicted is the y, slope or coefficient of correlation is b or m, predictor means which predict the data is the independent term, that is x, and the intercept is a or c or b, anything. This is the equation you are going to use for finding the calculation if the x is independent, if, or it can be the vice versa also. So let's check this sum. We have a correlation solved data here where the concentration and the amount have been used to find the correlation. So we have used here a last data formula. So by calculating, we get a correlation of 0.99, right? So it is very positive, strongly association, right? Okay, now, yeah, just look at this data. The concentration and the amount, and we are finding the x on y. What does it specify? The correlation is x on y. So if we check the regression equation and calculate the amount is 40 for this corresponding concentration, we will found that when x on y is calculated, the equation is x equal to a plus by. This is same as x equal to ym plus c. Just be clear here, because see, here we are calculating y equal to mx plus c. Means here y is on x. But in this sum, where you are calculating correlation on x on y, the equation changes. Here you take as x is equal to bm or by plus c or a. Okay. Now how to calculate our regression coefficient? So regression coefficient is calculated. It can be denoted by like bxy, and the summation of xy upon summation of y square is taken. Now this value is taken from your calculated data, means this term is used. So if you are using a large data, you take the whole term of this, your xy and your y square. Okay. So when we go back to our normal equation, we can say when you calculate your regression on x on y, you have to divide by y square. So if we write this equation in a format, you can say your x bar plus bxy, that is y minus y bar, is your x, when this all information is input. Now just calculate, we will calculate our sum. So we can say regression is of x and y. So the term is your x is equal to a plus bxy. Okay, where m is your bxy, means the correlation which have been calculated, this term correlation xy. Okay, so when we go to this, make the input of the data, we get bxy is equal to 0.437. So we have now calculated our slope. Now what about a constant, that your intercept? It is also called a constant. So when we input the data, that is your x bar minus your bxy upon y bar, this also data have been calculated by earlier. So we just input the data and find the a. Clear? So we can say the regression equation of x on y is x equal to minus 1.78, that is 0.437y, or it can be also written as x equal to 4.37y minus 1.78. So it is just a representation of data. You can change in the either way. Okay. If we use this equation to find the sum, that is the amount is 40 and we have to find the concentration. Okay, now here you have been given the amount, means here your y is as a, you are predicting the concentration, so you just input the value of y here and your x has been found out. You can see the amount is 40, then the concentration is 15.7. Okay, one last check. If how to find out we have got the right answer. See, the 40 denotes to 15.7. Just go to the data back. We will go and just check the data. See here. If we take 15 here, the values lies from 39 to 44, means we are in the right path, right? Hello?
Yes.
Are you understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is a checking point of your answer. If you are not sure that you have calculated or you have just missed some of the data, so you can just go to your data and check is your data and answer lie in this table or not, the given values. Okay, this is a checking point. Okay, now in the either condition, if the equation was for y on x, means till now we were studying x on y. If it was y on x, the equation changes because the byx is equal to then now summation of xy divided by summation of x square. So here it changes, means we can say when we are finding for bxy, it is divided by summation of y square. But when we go for our yx we have to divide by summation of x square. So this is a game of independent and dependent variable. So you have to be very careful while checking what is given as a dependent data, because your every calculations lie on this. Okay, now just we will calculate if it was on the either condition, like we are considering that y on x. So for calculating byx we are using the same data. So we input this data where you input your xy and summation of x square, and we get 2.25. okay, now you calculate your a where you input the data, and this is the equation. Okay, now student, you have an calculation. Listening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
By using this data, now calculate the value of y if x is 13. Calculate, use this equation and find y when x is 13. Let me know the answer.
Ma'am, 33.8.
33.8. Okay, so we will check our, is it under the range or not. See, just look at this data. I said when x is 13, right? Now your x lies here 13. So what is the data you said?
33.8.
So it lies in between these two, right?
Yes.
So the calculation is okay. So these are the just checking points. How to check what is the answer we have found is right or not. Okay. So in short term, we can say the regression of simple model can be with two variable. It is statistically used to analyze the strength and direction. And this is a comparison. When it is x on y, and you have to use this all datas, and when it is x on y, you can use this. So these two parameters you have to look. Clear? Okay. Now you have calculated your sum yesterday. Everyone has done the sum of correlation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is your question. We will just solve one sum. You have calculated your correlation like if of this data, right? The same data has been used. 5, 9, 13. So what was the correlation?
Very strongly positive correlation.
Okay. And what is the value?
0.986.
0.989.
989. Okay. Now using that 989, find your slope and your intercept. I will just give you, okay. Just one clarity. Tell me which is your independent and dependent. The question states here the x is independent. Means your predictor is x and your predict value will be y. So what is the condition here? It is x on y or y on x?
Y on X.
Y on x. So you will calculate your slope and intercept using y on x. So I will just show you the slide for reference. Now calculate your data. You can use this your y on x. Input the value and find the slope and intercept. you have to find the value of summation of xy and x square. And don't forget, here it is smaller xy and x square. So you have to use last data formula of correlation for finding this.
Ma'am,
Yes.
A value is 0.95.
Okay. Everyone is getting the same? Or near to something 93, 92, 96, anything? Calculate for slope. Did anyone get the slope? Did anyone get the slope? Or still calculating? What is summation of xy?
Ma'am,
Yes.
for finding slope, we have to apply formula y is equal to a plus bx, right?
No, for finding the slope, you have to use the byx equal to summation of xy upon summation of x square.
So for that, answer is 1.85.
1.85.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after that, a value is 0.95.
Okay. So now you have the equation. You have slope, you have the intercept.
Yes.
Now, what was your question? We will go just here. So now we can say if the value of x is 15, we have to find y, right? So you have your x value, you have your slope value, you have your intercept value or constant value. So now find your y. Here you have to use the equation y equal to mx plus c. Just inputs the data and find your y value. So what do you predict here? You have to just input the value and calculate.
Y value is 28.7.
28.7. So does it lie in the table? Just check the to observe value. If x is 15, right? So
Yes,
it will
it
lie
lies.
from your 13 to 17 in between this. So you
Yes.
are getting 28. So it is lying in between this, right?
Yeah.
So you are in the right path. Clear? So your answer is 100% right. This is a checking point where you can say your calculation is right or not and the data is dependable or not. So these
Okay.
types of slopes are used. Okay, now what is the use of finding this? In experimentation, when you do experimentations, so you go for like plotting a graph. You have we can say a standard graph. Example, we are finding a standard graph of particular compound. Let's see, we are finding the standard graph of protein. Okay, now you have taken the known amount, you take from 10 mg to 100 mg and you find the OD, right? If you find the OD, it corresponds to like from 0.1 to 1. So you plot that data. So how dependable is your data is verified from your y equal to mx plus c. The first is your r square, that is your correlation or the slope, or we can say the coefficient where it is depending on the independent one. Okay, now student, just look at this fourth sum. A fruit length and breadth was measured. Find out the regression equation and predict the breadth of fruit with the when the length is 5.4. Now here is a big confusion. What is your x and what is your y? Means I can say how to find now your independent one. Just try. What is your independent, length or breadth?
Length.
Length is independent. How?
Ma'am, its amount is given, I guess 5.4, that's why.
No. You have to just see. Here the breadth is given 3.2 in third sum. Just look for the third sum also. The predict the length of leaf when the breadth is 3.2. Does it means that this breadth is independent? Does it mean? How you find that it is independent or dependent? There is a clue in the question. Just check. Anyone? Or should I say? Anyone want to try, or should I say the answer? Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Ma'am, please explain it.
Okay. So just we will check the question. Here, hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So here it is, find out the regression equation of coefficient for the following data and collected. Okay. Predict the length of the leaf when the breadth is 32. The same statement you can see here. Predict the breadth of fruit when the length is 5.4. Means there is a clue. The word is predict. Right? In the starting, just look at this one. See, when it is predict, it is dependent, because you are going to calculate the value by given data. So whenever the question says you predict the value, means you have to find the dependent one. Clear? If it was a predictor, means if I say find the length of leaf, if the predictor is 3.2, then the slope changes, right? Now clear? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So now I will change this question for you, because for calculation you should know what is the difference between these two. Okay. Now the fourth question will be like, when the predictor breadth of fruit and the length will be changed. Okay. So in assignment, when you calculate, you have to look around the terms, the given, because not all the time you will be given it is independent or dependent. You have to always remember these terms. These 6 terms you have to always remember. Okay. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So any doubt till now?
No, ma'am.
No, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we will start with testing our hypothesis. Now, what does that testing the hypothesis is like it is made of? We can say, when just look for this question only. Here, no, we will go for any other examples. Just like, okay. Testing the hypothesis is something when a investigator or a experimenter says a term. Means if I say the drug was analyzed on particular like mice or any test subject, the data was very good or it was very significant. So how you find the hypothesis is right or not? So there are the different steps where we use for hypothesis. So we can say, in step 1, first we state what is null and what is alternate. Okay, you know about this. You have just remember all this term. But when and where to apply? What is null and what is alternate is always depend on the question. If the question says the drug was significant or not, question mark, we can say, okay, we can say here the alternate hypothesis as the drug was significant and null as the drug was not significant. Now, what is the difference? Null will be always against the question. Means if the question says the drug was significant, the null hypothesis will always say it was not significant. Or I can say the experiment conducted was successful. So null will be the experiment conducted was not successful, or it was not insignificant. It was insignificant. As an alternate, we can say it was significant. So these are particular terms you are going to use in the hypothesis testing. Means the null will be always against the experimenter, and alternate will be the statement supposed by the experimenter or the tester. Now, what is the second step here? You have to check the level of significance. Means what is the probability of error? Now, the tests are always conducted in many times. It is mostly like thrice a time minimum, or it can be 10 times, it can be 100 times. So we take the whole experimentation repetition as a 100 value, and you use that. If you take as a 0.1% as level of significance, it means you are taking 99%, 0.99% as a success rate. Means if the experiment was conducted 100 times, you give a chance of error for just one time. But if I change the level of significance to 5% or 0.5 value, it state in 100 times, 95 times it was successful and 5 times there was error. Clear? Did you understand? Hello?
No, ma'am. Once more.
Okay. So, did you understand the null and alternate?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we will check our second step, the state level of significance.
Level of
Okay. Let's consider I have or you have one of the student have done an experimentation. Okay. That same experimentation he has repeated 100 times. Clear?
Yes.
So now, if he is getting a positive answer 99 times and one time he is not getting the answer, means the level of significance here is 99% because just 1% error rate is seen. Clear?
Yes, yes.
If he is getting 5 times negative answer and 95%, 95 times positive answer, then it is 95%. Means 0.5% of level of significance. Clear now? Did you understand?
Yes.
Okay. So if I say the level of significance was 0.2, so what is the error rate here?
Error rate will be
Twice a
2%.
time?
Yes, yes,
2%?
yes. 2%.
Yeah. So if I say the error rate is 7%, then what is the value?
0.7.
0.7. Easy to understand now?
Yes.
It is just the percentage and value differs. Means the 100 is considered as 1 and the 99 is considered 0.9. Clear? 99.
Yes.
Okay. Now what is the third step? We have to identify the test statistic. What does it mean? If the data collected, for example, I'm collecting a leaf size of a plant which having given some like manure or some organic thing. Okay, I'm checking whether the manure is good for the plant or not. Clear? So I am checking whether the size of leaf grows better, or I can just check the percentage of the fruiting body present in the plant, right? So these are the like identifying a test statistic. If the question says, find out whether the manure added to the plant effect or not based on the sample given. So there can be a range of data of leaf size, there can be a range of fruit size or fruit number, or anything can be given. You have to just check whether that effect is effective or not. So there are statistical formula which we will calculate in our later lectures. That is our Z test, our T test, our ANOVA, and many things. But the testing of hypothesis is same for each and every. Okay. So these 5 steps you have to follow in all the other biostatical tool we are going to learn next time. Clear? So the test of statistics depend on the test given to you. And when to select T test, when to select Z test and ANOVA, we will study it also. Now what is the 4th step? 4th is the formula and the decision rule. Okay, now what is the decision rule? Formula will be the test given, means on identifying the statistic, we decide what to apply, like ZT or anything. It's like optional. But what is the decision rule now? Till now, you have understand your state of level of significance, right? So if I say the decision rule is actually a state of level of significance. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Are you understanding, or should I go slow? Should I go slow? Hello.
It is normal map.
Okay, no? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we were talking about the decision rule. We can say, okay, let's just imagine the test statistic value which we calculate is coming like point something. We can say the significance, when the significance value is 1%, or the level of significance is 1, then the decision rule will be be precise, or it can be very less chance of error. Means you can say if the formula or the value which are more or less by the graph will be deciding the rule. So when we calculate, we will specify what I am saying. So let's go for 5th step. That is, take the sample and arrive at the decision. Means you are going to get the statement from the question, what the examiner is saying or what the experimenter is saying, and analyze from the level of significance, find your decision rule and arrive at the decision. Now what is this decision? This decision is actually you reject the null or you accept the null. That is your decision making. This, the whole term will specify. For example, we were considering the manual example. So if we take the manual example, we can say the decision, if we say the manual was not useful as a null and alternate manual was useful. So if the value comes to the range, we can say we accept the alternate hypothesis and we reject the null. That says the examiner or the experimenter is claiming the right test. Clear? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can say here the alternate will be always be parallel to the examiner, but the null will be always to the against to the examiner. Clear? Okay. Now we will go for the properties of null and alternate. We can say the statement which has no relationship with the variables is null. Means that is always against. It will show no relation, but alternate will have significance, or statistically it will affect, or it is the measure between these two variables. Next, null is something, it has it says that no effect is observed, but alternates will say some or very more alternate hypothesis has effect, or the experiment shows the effect. Here researchers try to disprove. Okay, what does this mean? Null is something the researcher want the experimentation have to be valid, have to be passed. So he will say null as a non-agreeable test and alternate as a proof. We can say it changes the opinion when the alternate is accepted. Means when the test is conducted, when it is fruitful, it gives a successful statement. Means it is giving a particular opinion on the data. Means you have something positive opinion. It can also be a negative, but it is based on your null. Means when there is no change, or it can be a negative opinion, so it is a null. But when it is in a positive opinion or any change of the statement, then it is a alternate. So just remember, alternate will be always with the researcher, with the experimentator, but null is always the against. Now we can say indirect or implicit testing. What does it mean? Null is something which is saying just directly. They are not analyzing anything. It is just a disapproval against the statement. But alternate hypothesis is something we are saying after analyzing, after calculating, after finding the significance. So it is something we are implicitating it. We are making the proof that our experiment is actually working. So it is something which has to be proved. So we can say null is something an observation of chance. Means if the experiment is working or not, they are saying directly. So they are just taking a chance. But the alternate is always a real and the result of the observations and calculations. So it is something that the data will always be positive way, or the test will be fruitful if the alternate is accepted. Clear? Any doubt in this null and alternate? Students? और समझा नहीं कुछ भी?
समझा
कि समझा नहीं? क्लियर बोलो.
समझा.
Okay, because I know without example it is bit hard, but we will go with the example in our next lecture, because we don't have time to like calculate and analyze. So just let me know, do you have any problem in this steps, or your all differentiation between your null or something? Do you have any doubt in this 5 step?
No.
No, ma'am.
So between the what is reject null, accept alternate, any confusion in between these two terms? Just
No,
check.
ma'am.
Clear? So any between in this doubt? Any statement? Do you think some of the statements are wrong or right? Does all the statement was right? Okay, I think you have understand. Okay, student. Hello. So for today, it is done for a lecture. Now, after the session, I am just going to send you the link of a quiz 2, which is based on your second week or second lecture, that is of a standard deviation. You attempt, and for the next week, you are going to having the quiz 3 and quiz 4. So same, we will repeat. You will have quiz 3 based on correlation and quiz 4 based on your regression. Okay. Now I have one announcement. When the data you calculate, you have to be very clear, because all the time you don't have to just say the value. In quiz, most of the time you will get the statement. Does it lie? Does it affect? Or it can be like, does the regression equation is right? So be clear in writing the terms in the formula and the sign. Okay? Just a silly mistake can make you wrong. Students, now next time we will just revise this, your testing the hypothesis, and we will go for the Z test. Okay, I want to know, are you ready for Z test or should I start with T test? Which is easier for you, Z or T?
स्टूडेंट की टेस्ट
आप ऑडिबल नहीं है, प्लीज से बोलेंगे फिर से? हेलो,
स्टूडेंट की टेस्ट थोड़ा इजी है
ओके. सो Z टेस्ट हाइपोथेसिस टेस्टिंग है, Z टेस्ट में आपको प्रॉब्लम है?
नहीं, इतना प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आता तो है दोनों, बट स्टूडेंट की टेस्ट ज्यादा इजी है.
ओके, ठीक है. सो देन आई विल जस्ट मेक the session like in the next time we will have testing the hypothesis and Z test in the combination, because the hypothesis is mostly used in Z1. The T can be used in a different way. So the both application can be done. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So now we are done for today's lecture. I will just invite Veena ma'am to end the session.
Yeah.
Hello, Veena ma'am.
Yes, Karishma.
Ma'am, you can end the session. I will send the link after the lecture in the group.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to ask students, just let me know whether this 5 minutes break or 10 minutes break is helping you. Is it okay? We continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Very much helpful.
Very much helpful. Okay, fine. Chalo. Okay, so all the
Thank you,
best in the test, and have a good day. Be safe, be healthy. Right?
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.